Good afternoon to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey Ames, good afternoon to you. Welcome to everybody for another edition of Lead Better. We're going to talk about today's field note, which is about stress. Stress, that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? Actually, there's some fun parts in here, but the title of the field note, number 1683, is Why Do Some Leaders Feel More Stress? All leaders would feel stress to some degree or another. And I guess the question is, sometimes the leaders that would seem to be under the most stress, they look pretty calm and happy. So why are they that way? And some other leaders just seem to be frantic. And I guess the question is, Mikey, is it the stress that you're feeling, or is it the way that you're carrying the stress? What's the bigger problem or signal?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good distinction to start this off. We're not talking necessarily about pressure here. We're talking about what the pressure translates into for most people. So surely some people can withstand a lot more pressure than other people can withstand. But there are people who translate that pressure into stress at such an early level that it feels like, okay, where's all this stress coming from? Where it wouldn't be stress for me. I acknowledge it's pressure, but it wouldn't be stress. And so, yeah, I mean, some people just do it differently. I suppose you individually would have the reputation that comes with being able to roll with pressure simply because you've been in live on-camera situations where the idea of that for most people who've never done that kind of thing before would feel like, oh, that would give me all kinds of pressure and immediately stress right after that, right?
Yeah, and I suppose that's true. And I actually, back in my earlier life as a television news anchor, and I particularly like being a local television news anchor. I did work at CBS News on a fellowship program when I got out of school for a while, but I like being connected to the community. If there's breaking news, and oftentimes that breaking news is something that is terrible, right? It's not very often that it's like, we have some breaking news and everything is fantastic. And we're going to go out to our field reporters to hear just how fantastic it is, right?
So if you actually had a story come your way that, as a local reporter, there's a lot of personal connections that you would have in and around the stories that are breaking, some of which you're quite close to, others of which you might feel like you're 2 or 3 degrees away from it.
Sure.
Right? Is there some kind of, like, in the way that we treat semi-truck drivers that are only allowed to drive for so many hours out of a 24-hour period, is there some limit that the local news team kind of puts on how close you are to a story as to whether or not you can report it?
Yeah, a good question. And actually, there probably are. We could probably actually do one of those little 5 secrets from a breaking news anchor on how to handle stress in crazy times. And let's actually, there are 1 or 2 things I'd like to lean into on this. But let me set it up this way, because this field note, and for everybody watching today live, we're giving you an advance idea that we also have a part 2. We don't often have 1-2 punches in field notes over the 4.5 years of doing them, but we kind of build a theme. And I'm not even giving away yet, because some of you have read the field note and you kind of know where it's going and already. Those of you who are just listening, watching, it's not a big tease, but we're going to get to kind of like, all right, well, how do the best leaders handle stress? And there's an understandable sort of explanatory style. And then we're going to build that out tomorrow. And I think those things are very helpful. So I think we will today be in good shape, and then tomorrow we'll be even in better shape as we talk about this, because there's certainly been things that have been helpful for me. But I do know that some people might just have an innate capacity to handle a little bit more chaos. Some of that might just be aptitudinal, people that are able to handle a lot of different inputs at a given time and kind of deal with them. And other people are like, I got to handle one thing at a time, and I got to really think it through. And all of those are not strengths or weaknesses necessarily, right? The person that can handle a lot of input might not be able to focus very well. The person that can focus on one thing might not be able to handle the chaos, but they can actually sort through the problem and so we need all of these people, right? So in this, when you see this, the nature of the leader and how the leader wears that does become important. And then the question then becomes, can you get better at that? And are there things that you can do? Because we do know, as the field note sets up, that too much stress can be a problem health wise. It can affect the attitudes on the team, but the right amount of stress makes you stronger. We know that. That's the whole point of going into the gym, right?
Right. So the silver bullet is listed at the end of the field note. I don't want to necessarily say it yet, but my thought, like, how do you practice getting better at dealing with stress, would be like, okay, we know that there's research out there specifically about becoming more resilient when you do things that you don't want to do, right? And the key difference there is not necessarily around doing things that are hard, but doing things that are hard and also you do not want to do. Like there is
Right.
there is some extra resilience building when the activity that you're talking about is something you really don't want to do, right?
Yeah, and sometimes if you just build that into the practice of your life, and I think that's a lot of it, which is just that the things that might be like overwhelming to somebody else are if you're accustomed to a certain pattern, it just becomes a part of the regular day.
Right.
And there's a lot of little mechanisms, in that. And there are things that I'll do later in the gym for a couple hours, this evening, and people would be like, this is so hard. I don't even think about it. Like I'm listening to a podcast, so I'll be watching the game. I'm just going through the whole process. It actually isn't even affecting my emotional radar about how difficult the thing is. Right. And so whether you're the person that jumps in the ice bath or whether you're the person that is trying to like really go, hard on a long distance run, there are moments when you're going to stress your body, but then it's the ebb and flow of how you kind of come back to baseline. Now that's a little bit hard for a leader who's kind of got 7 meetings today. The creditors are pressing in. The top client just quit. I was on a Zoom call with a top executive, a founder of a major organization, the other day. Someone I know pretty well, and in the middle of the Zoom call, and this was a personal call, it wasn't actually a work related call, but we're just kind of talking on Zoom, and he gets a text message, and like a key person in their organization is resigning, and I was like, "Do you need to go?" And he was like, "No, I'm fine. We'll deal with it right after this." Right? He was very calm. Just kind of went about the rest of the conversation. Paused about 15 minutes later to send one text message. Right. So the question is, you called it a silver lining, and we'll get to that, but it's like we think of sometimes the silver, like the guy gets elected president, and like 3 years later, he's got a gray hair. And you're like, well, what happened? Because sometimes those presidents, Obama, Reagan, whatever it may be, they have this way that they seem to be okay when they're talking, but they're wearing a lot of the weight of the, heavy is the head, right? And so that's the question. Like, how do you want, because I think there are some leaders that think that the way that I show that I'm the leader is that I just show how I'm doing more than everybody, and this is so intense, and and goodness, you all can't kind of, meet my level of grind. Right. I just don't think that lasts very long, and it actually isn't motivating to other people. The best ones, I think, are the ones kind of like, to me, we'll take it out of politics, like Alan Mulally. Whenever I've seen him speaking in all kinds of situations, he seems like really calm and full of energy, and like he's really enjoying the complexities of the things that he's talking about. Now, I don't know how he was in the boardroom, but I kind of have a feeling that he sort of radiated that calm enjoyability.
Right. In Management of the Absurd, it talks specifically about this and trying to find a metaphor for like how these tough situations are and what leadership is like. And the metaphor eventually comes out. It's like leadership is like being in love, right? And it's the idea of like, can you enjoy the complexity of the absurdity, right? That you actually find fascinating this human condition that we as leaders are actually trying. And falling in love with that is this weird thing that allows you to like continue to be passionate about the thing, even though it's complex, even though it's emotional, even though it's stressful, right? I like that.
I haven't read. I know that what's it called? Management of the Absurd.
Absurd, yes.
Yeah, that's come up in Admired Leadership a number of times, and so I'm interested in that. But I think that there's a real truth in that, and it's not trivial. I think it actually goes. There's a philosopher here in the Pittsburgh area named Esther Meek, who I know. In fact, I have her business card, and on her business card it just says "Invite the real." and she's an expert on the Hungarian scientist philosopher Polanyi. But her whole framework is that the idea of when we're trying to know something or understand something or deal with something, it's a relationship. And that you have to have an element of love in that, of loving to know. Right. And that when you are treating that as kind of this sort of back and forth relationship, now you're getting into a whole different territory. And I'm not trying to get too esoteric here, but it's exactly what you're speaking to, which is if you have this idea that this is like something that is a real opportunity, and now we're getting into language, and now we're getting into the silver lining, because the field note is really taking us to what is the language that you're using? What's the explanatory style? Is it a pessimistic explanatory style? Is it a defeated explanatory style? Is it a positive? Is it optimistic? What's the language that the leader is using? Because the leaders who use the optimistic explanatory styles tend to be radiating less stress, probably feeling less stress too.
Right. Which is why the metaphor of being in love kind of like really works there well. Like
for sure.
If you're in love with a partner, then the idea of speaking to them, which is in a way that's constantly demeaning or being pessimistic, just doesn't jive with the idea that you're in love with them, right? And so being in love with complex situations, being in love with leadership, which is very complex, because you're fascinated on like how all of this works out, kind of does the same thing. And so calling that optimism is a great way to talk about it. And then the metaphor of being in love it's really very fitting.
Right. Well, and these are, I think one of the things that holds people back, and we can probably get into this a little bit more tomorrow, is people want to be, they don't want to be unrealistic, right? They want to be like, I got to be grounded in reality here. I'm not this woo-woo person that just believes you can sort of, chant incantations and say these magic phrases and everything's going to get better. I don't think that's actually what we're talking about. We actually understand that language is sort of fundamental to our species in a way that allows us to create realities. I mean, it actually is. And so then the way that we engage with that becomes fundamentally important. Like we were talking about just, in issues of time, a few weeks ago, and I talked about the idea from the two guys whose names I can never remember, where they were like, if you're picking the biggest thing of your day, it's not like just number one on your task list. It's not the thing that's your to-do list. It's the highlight of your day.
Right.
If you're thinking about the thing to say, what is the thing is the highlight of my day? And so I've been playing around with that. Is this the highlight of my day? Is this the thing that I'm actually the happiest about? If I think about it ahead of time, what would the highlight, if I was really looking forward to something, and I'd be like, and yesterday I had to write in an email that we were going to send out for a particular, project. And I kind of wrote that down as my highlight. And it took me about 2 hours. It took me longer than I thought, but I really enjoyed it. And I think I really enjoyed the entire time because I actually framed it in the way that this is the highlight. This is actually the top experience. This is not a chore to get through. This is something to kind of like fully immerse yourself into. Right. So I think that part of it is the thing that the field note begins to pay off. And we're going to, because I actually have spent a lot of time, because it's the field note teases the fact around the science and the research around optimistic explanatory styles. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 30 years looking at some of those things, and I'm pretty familiar with the content. And so I'll be interested in your thoughts on that, particularly as you're wearing a 49ers jersey right now here on Saturday, January 17th at 3:14 in the afternoon. And your team is not favored to win tonight.
No. We're down by 7. So we end up finding all kinds of ways to talk positively about the Niners.
Right.
Not ruin the juju, wear the exact kind of clothes, shave your facial hair in the exact kind of way. Right? Wow. All the things that you do to kind of tell yourself you are positive. Like it's this weird thing where a lot of sports fans do try to send positive vibes to their teams based upon where they're sitting in their own living room. Right. Because this is the good chair to sit in, and this is not the good chair.
Well, exactly right. The one thing that we can say, and I really encourage people to think about this, because there's an element of this, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation tomorrow, that is admired leadership behavioral. And you would be like, how is it like an optimistic explanatory style something that is like when we say it's about what you do, right? It's not just the thoughts in your head. It's not just an attitude. And there is a lot of actual research backing this up because we're talking about how you use words out loud with other people, with yourself. And as you start to use those words and actually act around those words, you don't actually have to have this thing where it's like, all right, I'm optimistic. It's just it's not, there's no like incense burning. That when you start to use explanatory, optimistic words and act in that direction, you will begin to be that way. And you can attach these to realism, and we'll talk about realism tomorrow in a very practical way. But I think in the end, that's the issue here with stress, which is the leaders that are able to kind of frame things and act toward things in an optimistic way begin to manage that stress level much better.
Right. Okay, fantastic. I look forward to tomorrow. It'll be a good one. And it's odd for us to tease it this way, but I think
I know. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right.
See you then.
All right. Bye now.